Hello, welcome to Dojo Live once again. My name is Kim Lantis, and I'll be hosting from our Nearsoft Hermosillo office today, along with Matt Perez. Hey, Matt.
Hi.
As well as Carlos Ponce. And our guest today, thank you for joining us, is Mr. Bob Offutt. He is the Senior Technology Analyst for Focusrite as we're gearing up for next week's conference. How are you doing today, Bob?
I'm doing just fine, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to speaking with you. Bob, so you chose the title of today's talk, which is The Travel Distribution Technology Ecosystem, Dinosaur or Leading Edge. So we know, Bob, that you've got a lot of experience when it comes to this. So I think the first thing we'd like to do is listen to what you have to say, your experience, what you've seen throughout the years, trends that you've come up against, and then, of course, what that means for the future.
Okay. Well, the entire travel distribution ecosystem is built on a foundation that was developed in the 80s, driven by the airlines. It was very much trip-oriented. It was way before the personal computer. Some of the code was written back in the 60s, actually. So the core distribution system, particularly for air, is built on a foundation that is 30 or 40 years old.
Wow.
30, 40 years old. I couldn't have imagined that myself. Okay, Bob, I have a quick question, if I may, before we get really deep into this. Let me just go back a little bit. I understand. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand that there's some kind of trouble. I mean, there's been some kind of trouble with travel distribution because it's considered amongst the biggest e-commerce market, and maybe it's the most turbulent, so to speak, due to a lack of a better word. So in order to complete, players must define their place in travel's next wave. What would you say that it takes to ride that particular next wave?
Well, it takes kind of a vision of where you want to go, but the most difficult part is the money, and that is monetizing new initiatives in the travel distribution. Right now, the commissions are all paid by hoteliers and airlines, and car rental companies, and so because they hit the money, they somewhat constrain the channel.
Okay, I see. Thank you so much, Bob. Okay, I'm sorry, Kim. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that's really interesting. So, what is it that technology could do to convince that, or perhaps decrease that bottleneck?
Well, you need to look at the entire trip process, which is dream, search, shop, buy, experience, and share.
Could you repeat those for us?
Okay. Dream, search, shop, buy, experience, and then share.
And the share part is the really important part, I think.
Definitely.
Very good. Okay. So would you like to walk us through this? I mean, I think we can have a good idea of what each one of those components step by step looks like, but could you add a little bit of detail perhaps on each one of those portions and what that means to technology and maybe what developers or commerce, what they might look at each one of those phases and where we think it's headed for the future?
Well, actually, we're seeing a lot of work around dream. That is trip planning, things where you don't know where you want to go, but you like hot weather and you like sand and then beer. So the tools now are coming about that will help you narrow down the myriad choices that you have for your potential vacation, for your leisure trip. So there's more and more information being available online, but there's also better tools, artificial intelligence and machine learning, which then learn what your preferences are, Kimberly, and what mine are, and certainly they're different. There's a bit of an age gap here.
Right.
So with those kinds of tools, we're seeing a much better way to dream about where you want to go.
And I think that's really interesting. I imagine that's a really big difference between technology and travel of today than it was the 30, 40 years ago that you spoke of. So I think when the technology first came about, was Dream even on that radar?
Oh, no. It was all, it was magazines and big books that had hotel listings and really, really bad stuff.
And I think too, not only that, I think accessibility as far as travel technology, I think the ease of getting somewhere is a lot different than it used to be. Affordability. And so I think that must all influence our dream element a lot as well.
That's right. Because you can now afford to take a trip to Caribbean where you couldn't have done that 40 years ago.
I love that, the accessibility. So the first part we have to look at is dream, how people dream. And so I think that's a really key component. You had mentioned artificial intelligence and what I'm interested in, but what about the other side? How do you influence what you want me to be interested in?
Well, certainly there's all kinds of, there's offers, there's coupons, there's advertisements, there's interactive TV initiatives that provide a view of what a resort in the Caribbean will look like, and then you can connect to a link that is on the TV screen. There's a lot of different ways of doing it. So there's reactive, but as you look and dream and see where you want to go, and the other is the technology figures out where you ought to be looking and guides you there.
I'm sorry, Kim. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think I was just wondering what you might project the future of the making dreams look like. I think in the past, I think we're a lot, you look at an idea of blitzing emails and spamming and, hey, have you heard about, or advertisements on the sidebar of your Facebook account or whatever it might be. But what else? What do you think? Do you have any vision of what those influences might look like in the future?
Well, we're already seeing it with artificial intelligence and some work that IBM is doing with their Watson machine. That's the one that won Jeopardy. So it's crunching hundreds of thousands of pages, and then develop the algorithms to match those pages to your preferences, so that you're looking at top 10, not the top 1,000, which is mind-boggling.
Mm-hmm. And I imagine to take preference, not only what I'm interested in, but what I could afford.
Yeah, all that.
Interesting. So after we've dreamed and we've convinced people where they should head,
then it's searching, and then there's meta search, which look at the search sites. There's all manner of different tools that allow you to look at what there might be in a destination. The problem is there's too much information. It's very difficult to compare apples to oranges to bananas, and so the shopping, people complain it takes them, they go to 12, 14, maybe 30 different sites to try to figure out how to get the best price and the best experience. Mm-hmm. So I think that there's going to be tools and facilities, again, using artificial intelligence and some standards, some normalization of the content, which will then make it easier to shop or search. I mean,
and I imagine that's where the whole user experience comes in, very key when it comes to the design and the functionality of the sites.
Yeah, and that's you hit it on the head. The whole thing and the future of travel and where people are going to want to be is to have the best possible experience. But that experience starts with dreaming. So you don't want, you could easily spend 30, 40, 50, 60 hours trying to plan a perfect vacation. Mm-hmm. And that's just too much.
And so what is it, do you think, that motivates people today, or are they even motivated today to spend that time trying to plan the perfect vacation? Or do you suppose are travel agencies now, did they go the way of the dinosaur, or are they ready to come back, or what does that look like?
Well, the travel agencies are probably one of the most under-automated portions of our society. They still live back in the GDS era, where they either call their friends at the cruise line and say, I got two people that really want to get on a last-minute cruise. Can you find a cabin for them at the sea deck with the porthole? And there's a lot of that. The travel agents have almost, not all but many have abandoned air because air isn't paying well. It doesn't pay good money. So they go to tours, they go to cruise, they go to hotels. Look where the money is.
Bob, I'd like to ask you a question, if I may. In tying back to the title of today's topic, which is dinosaur, or actually it's a tagline, dinosaur or leading edge, the travel distribution technology ecosystem dilemma. In tying to this tagline, the travel sector has, some say that it has reached the next phase in its evolution, but destruction is necessary, they say. So in that regard, what would you say needs to be destructed?
Well, the reliance on the GDS, I think, is going to diminish. As a matter of fact, we're already seeing Lufthansa penalize people who write a ticket on Lufthansa through the GDS. They pay a 16 euro surcharge because of the privilege of using GDS as opposed to just going to Lufthansa and booking it directly. So we're going to see that kind of channel warfare, and it's going to shake out in a different way.
Okay. Cool. Excellent. Okay. Thank you, Bob. Thank you for your answering my question. Matt, do you have any questions for Bob?
As he was describing the various stages, dream and things like that, Bob, I thought it's really a circle, right? You start by maybe dreaming with your friends, etc., and it's all fueled by the social aspect of today's world. So you might be dreaming because somebody said, "Oh, I went to, I don't know, Jamaica or something," and that gets you going. You start a search, may do it with friends, etc. By the time you get down to the share, you're back at getting other people to dream with you.
That's right. It's a big circle. Yeah, okay. And in each cycle, there's some sharing as well, because in your dreaming, your searching, you might want to share that information with your friends, so you could share at any stage of the travel value chain.
So is the travel industry, you think, really jumping in there and taking advantage of this, or there's still a lot they have to do? Or, I mean, what kind of things do you think they should be doing?
Well, the travel agents, particularly the leisure travel agents, have not discovered social yet. I think they're trying to figure out what's going on. So it's just they are stuck, in the world of cryptic screens and GDS tools, and they're very technology weak, technology poor. So and part of the problem is that they've been used to having their technology provided by the GDS. Now they have to get their own technology in many cases, and that's a challenge for them. They're not equipped to do that.
And nobody's stepping in to provide the technology and make a business out of it?
Well, we're seeing a number of different players. Well, it's really interesting. For this year's Focusrite conference, we interviewed well over 60 different companies and their innovations. And this is the first year where we've seen a couple of really solid tools that would engage the traveler and the travel agent and the traveler's friends all together. So the travel agent has value.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, the value part, because it's like, I think people now more and more, we get used to doing things on our own, whether it's because that's what we're comfortable with, or that's just the way that technology is pushing us toward. But we're more and more comfortable with searching and planning and checking, and I'll just do it myself. That way I can guarantee that it's what I want. And so that must be a challenge to prove your legitimacy, that you still have a place.
Well, but the other side of that, Kim, is that many husbands would much rather the travel agent plan their trip, so that if it's a bad trip, the wife doesn't yell at the husband.
or they have more. They can trust the travel agent. Look, the budget is this amount. That's what we've got.
Yeah, that's right.
Budget's always a very, very interesting, a very important part, right? Yeah. Bob, you mentioned the case of. I'm sorry, Kim?
No, go ahead. I think there's a slight delay. Go ahead.
Okay, no, okay, good. Bob, you mentioned the case of Lufthansa, and well, a lot of companies are investing like millions or billions of a lot of dollars in the next wave of travel e-commerce. So, what would you say that it's in those changes, in those investments? What would you say it's more important, like from, I don't know, revamping the websites or changing the technology infrastructure or consolidation? Where should these companies that are investing start?
Well, all those are important. We ran across a company the other day that was actually taking unstructured information and using artificial intelligence to understand it and make it structured. That's been the key to airline distribution for these many years, is that they have developed their own structure and they police that structure. The hotels, not so much. Tours, not at all. So, so these things are ways, but the problem is monetizing it, because at the end of the day, it's the booking. Okay, so that all has to contribute to going down the conversion funnel, so that at the end, when you get to buy, you have gone through the steps of different steps that you need to do.
Perfect, excellent. Okay, a quick pause, if I may. I'd like to remind the audience that you can send us your questions by Twitter. And it's right here on my lower third. It's at DojoLIVE. Just at DojoLIVE. Send us your questions, and we'll read them back to Bob, and then we'll get back to you right here. So, okay, I have a whole bunch of questions that I have assembled. This is a very relevant, very interesting topic, and it's also relevant because it's, as you know, Focusrite is right around the corner, and we'll be there. But okay, before I jump into that, Matt, do you have anything else for Bob before I continue with my questions?
The one question I want to get answered at some point is the one about permissionless innovation. I'm really curious about what that might be.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's an interesting topic, and we actually wrote a paper to delve into it a little bit. The idea was that big companies like Google were able to turn their engineers loose for like 20% of their time to experiment with anything they want. And that got Google into a couple of interesting different businesses. But if you're a pharmaceutical manufacturer, you wouldn't want your R&D group working on autonomous cars. So that would be permissionless innovation. That is, the innovators are free to look any place they want. What I see, and what I think is a better way to look at innovation, is be contextual innovation. So that you basically have to innovate within the context of your business. So travel companies wouldn't be producing better medications.
Right.
I hope not.
What type of activities? Are you aware of any type of activities or programs, or how might a travel company encourage their employees to innovate within their sector? What might that look like? What type of activities, freedoms?
Well, there's a whole variety of ways to approach innovation. You have the startups, and there's been a lot of consolidation in the travel industry where the startup has a new idea, and then they come along and get bought out. We had one that had a better user interface, Hipmunk, and they were bought recently by Concur. So we see new ideas come along, and then if they're good enough, then they get sucked up by the traditional players who have had trouble innovating themselves. And part of the reason why they don't innovate themselves is because brand managers grew up managing their brand in a certain way. And they also are schooled to listen to the customer. The problem is with innovation, you don't always know, the customer doesn't always know what they want.
And I think in travel, that's even more key, because the whole idea of travel is to step outside yourself, to have an experience out of your ordinary life, something that you've never done before. So it's interesting to think you can't rely on the customer in that sense, because they don't even know what's out there potentially.
That's correct.
Very cool.
Very cool.
Bob, a question from regarding on the engineering side. Engineering wise, what would you say that what types of technology has the potential to significantly impact online travel planning and booking?
Well, I'm an infrastructure guy, so I kind of think of things in terms of what the foundation ought to look like. But you have got to look at availability and reliability. If you run the numbers, 99.99%, it's really a large amount of downtime. So you need to have high availability, high reliability systems, and that scale. I think the recent election caused the Canadian Department of whatever to fail because it didn't scale. All the people were looking at moving to Canada. So, so yeah, and then a couple of years ago, Delta had a huge sale. It brought their system to its knees, their reservation system. You got to have scalability. And doing that, you have to use the internet technologies aren't necessarily built for that kind of scalability.
Okay, I understand. Okay.
So what should these guys be doing to provide that reliability and availability?
Well, there are tools, and so a couple of things. You have to employ high availability tools, and there are a number of them that are coming out. But then you have to do a lot of testing. So you have to test for the extreme conditions. You have to test for what's on the edge condition, not the normal condition. And so those things you've got to pay attention to. Even though you may want to drive innovation and new ideas and be a thought leader, which are all important. If you can't build that house on a good foundation, then you might as well not be in the business.
Okay, Kim?
No, I like that a lot. I think, well, actually, it's really interesting because a few weeks ago we did a webinar on UX design, and they were talking about the idea of coming up with a product. And off the top of my head, let's see if I can't remember what these were, but that they were mentioning that you needed to have it be viable, something like connected to your business and what you do and like your own ambitions, and then also with the client and what they want. And so I think the viability, I think, is really what you hit home on. Like, we can dream big, but if we can't handle it, it wouldn't matter much.
That's right.
Very good. Thank you.
Bob, there's something that I also wanted to ask you is, what would you say that the top business and technology trends that will affect the future of travel distribution are?
Okay, right now we're seeing a whole lot of activity in the area of artificial intelligence and machine learning. Now, it's being applied in different ways with different quality of product, but still, it is today's big thing. Last year it was mobile, and mobile now has been consumed as part of our ecosystem, our lives. So we live with mobile, and so now we're seeing how better to put content on those mobile devices than others.
Absolutely. And
I think
yes, Kim, go ahead.
Let's talk about mobile. I mean, how many years do you have, Bob, in this industry of experience?
Okay, in travel, I've been doing it since 1991.
91. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so 91, cell phones weren't a big deal. Did you ever imagine back then? Well, heck, it hardly even existed. Let's talk about that for a sec. I think the idea of something that we'd never even imagined that is so commonplace today. Do you have an idea of what that next thing might be? 20 years from now, what might it be that we never imagined that is so commonplace 20 years from now, particularly in the travel industry? And do you see that?
Well, actually, yes. I used to run a part of Sabre called Sabre Labs, and we built prototypes to show the art of the possible. So we had a 2G mock-up phone in about 1998 that actually showed the map to your hotel, the picture of the bedroom, and all of that. So I think, yes, we had a pretty good idea of where it was going to go. It just took a while for the technology to catch up.
So what is that? Do you see that today?
Yeah.
What,
oh, sure.
what is it? We don't have the technology for it, but this is what we vision. This is what it's going to look like.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand your question.
Okay, so back then you could say this is where it's headed. We can't do it yet, like with the mobile phones, but this is what we're going to see.
Yep.
So what is that of today? What do we have planned and what are we envisioning that we can't quite do yet? But what is it that's that equivalent of, but today?
Okay. It goes back to the traveler's experience. And the experience has got to be seamless. You don't want to have one site for your rental car, another check the weather, another check the road conditions, another to check the parking availability, another to check in for valet parking, another one to check in at the airport, another one to get your luggage taken someplace. It's fragmented, badly fragmented. So it's got to come together so there's a seamless passenger experience, or customer experience.
I like that vision, and I think I agree. It actually goes back to a conversation that we had last week with one of our DojoLIVE guests, Raj Singh, who is also speaking at Focusrite. He about his product Ivy, who helps the hotel industry, and it's really interesting because we were talking about the influence of technology today, how we as people are less patient, right? I mean, you think back in the 90s and you'd like the internet, wow, this new thing, and you'd log in and the noises, and you'd wait, and that's fine. And then today you're like, if you're not, hooked up to the wireless in less than like 10 seconds, what's wrong with this thing? And so technology influences that, and where I think we expect that fast response, which is why, with using Ivy or even having that automation with the machine really helps that seamlessness. And so I think it's really key too, like that idea of a one-stop shop, because that's what we expect, and everything takes longer than that. We don't have the patience for it anymore. And so perhaps I think you hit that nail on the head. So yeah, the technology, can it be done? What do you think? The projection on that seamlessness.
Well, there's even at your destination, you want to go to a different place for dinner. You want to see information about something. Take a look at the recent Pokemon craze. And Google produced Pokemon produced a global product that showed streets, and it showed locations, it showed all built on Google products. And so if you could do that for a bunch of little figures, then you could do that for menus, and you could do that for events, and you could have basically a virtually assisted world for your experiencing. You don't have to go at the concierge and look through a sheaf of menus to figure out where you want to eat. You just look around.
Bob,
You're right.
I'm sorry, Matt.
I was going to say, Bobby's right that today that's very fragmented. So there's Yelp for some things, there's Ivy for some others. There's Lounge Buddy if you want to find a lounge at an airport. So you end up with a bunch of different apps, and you have to have the map in your head of, oh, for this I go here, and for that I go there. And so yeah, I would very much welcome something that would bring that all together. So.
And I think it goes, like back to like the laziness, like, another app, like, and even having that, like, it has to be a really, really good one for you to even have it in the forefront of your mind, or even to look for it, like, and so I think to start bringing it all together actually it's genius. Difficult.
Bob, I was just thinking that you just mentioned that you started in the travel tech industry way back in 1991, and I can only wonder what it looked like overall before the appearance of smartphones and all the technology that we have today. In this regard, let's talk about API strategy. Would you say that it's now an imperative for many travel tech businesses that want to succeed?
Yeah, we in our interview process for Focusrite, we've run across a large number of companies who are going to build the next big consumer brand. And we tell them, you don't have any idea how much it's going to cost and how difficult it's going to be to build a consumer brand. let somebody else do that hard work. Let people who already have boots on the street to develop that consumer brand. You provide the inside stuff, the good stuff that makes it a good brand. Intel inside, and they seem to listen. And we've seen a number of companies pivot where they start out with a consumer brand and they realize that this isn't going any place, and they end up being inside another app, and that works out really well for them.
Okay. And in terms of full-fledged adoption, what do you think are the major challenges facing the end user through online travel agencies like OTAs, Expedia, Orbitz, etc.?
Well, they're still the 800-pound gorilla when it comes to air shopping, and so. But the Lufthansa initiative was interesting because what it caused some travel managers to do. Now, let me talk about that for a minute. If all the airlines only went to direct connect, then it would be almost impossible to shop, because you could not shop multiple transfer points, a trip that had more than one airline in it. There would be a great deal of difficulty shopping. So if the airline or the travel community went to a direct connect strategy, then there had to be some way to do shopping. Fortunately, Google offers a product that does shopping for free. So what we're finding is that some travel companies are using the direct connect, but then they're going back to Google and asking if that's the best price. And if the Google says no, that's not the best price, then they go into a full-fledged shopping mode.
Okay. Okay. I still got my set of questions here, but I don't want to take everything. So Kim, Matt?
No, you have to forgive my ignorance in this, but could you expand on what the direct connect means? I'm not familiar with that.
Okay. Air shopping 101. The airlines distribute their fares and their rules to the GDSs, and there's about 20 GDSs, or companies that look like GDSs. Okay, so they deliver those fares and rules. Then the agents who sell those shop against those fares and rules. And so they know that you want to go from San Francisco to New York, you can change planes to Chicago, Minneapolis, Atlanta, so on. Okay, so that heavy lifting is all done by the GDS, and it's a huge cost because the look-to-book ratio is up to 1,000 to 1 in many cases.
Wow.
Okay, so the airlines are tired of paying the GDSs to help the GDS customers compare fares. So they want you, when they want to go direct connect directly from the travel agent's office to the reservation system of the airline.
Okay, I see.
But you could conceivably have 20 airline hookups, but the technology to shop across those is the GDS technology, and it's expensive and it's complicated.
So what's the alternative?
Well, one alternative is to stay in the GDS, but in some cases, customers are willing to pay a fee, but a 16-euro fee is a fee. So there's still a lot of tension in the channel about how this is going to shake out. In the meantime, the airlines have developed new technology based on XML, which makes these connections easier.
Okay.
Thank
you, Bob.
Yep.
So, again, I'm just thinking the engineering part. I mean, I'm just out of curiosity because I'm really not an engineer. But still, I would like to ask you, when engineering, with the engineering part of online travel tools and solutions, what sort of engineering challenges would you say that should not be overlooked? For example, team growth, multicultural teams, etc. Anything that could affect the overall outcome, or even the go-to-market strategies.
It's really a design issue, and you need to have a variety of skills, starting with the design and the infrastructure. But then you have to worry about the applications and the front end stuff. And then finally, you need to have the testers. So it's a community that puts together a good experience on the internet. I did some consulting for a company that was building a reservation system for a small airline, and I asked, I said, "Well, do you have any way to test this, to look and see if something goes wrong? Do you have a dashboard that tells you where the problem is?" They said, "No, that's in phase 2." Well, they never got to phase 2.
I see. So when you have like distributed teams all over the world, and let's say that there could be issues with localization and things of that nature, what are the alternatives in order to make this seamless?
Well, I think there's been a lot of work with rapid application development and different ways of building new things. I'm not sure any one of those is better than the other. I'm not an application guy, but the challenge of having distributed teams is keeping them in line, aligned, and motivated.
Okay, cool. Yeah, definitely. I think we know a thing or two about motivation and just doing the right thing in the right place. So, okay,
and distributed
Matt,
as well.
And distributed, of course. Okay. Sorry if I'm moving around. I just need to plug this thing. Okay.
It's making. It's there. I was gonna say there was some type of static sound, but it's gone now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I just fixed it. Okay. All right. So I still have a couple of them, but Matt, do you have anything else for Bob?
No, so far it's been an interesting conversation. It's just that I'm not very knowledgeable of this space, except as a traveler. And as a traveler, I do agree with some of the things, a lot of the things that he said about integration and stuff like that. But I did want to make a comment. The thing about 1991, and Kim kept saying, way back when. Well, it's not way back when.
I don't think I said, did I say that? I said 20, 30 years ago. I don't think I called it way back when. I was alive in 1991. I do have memories of 1991. It's funny because I was actually talking to Julio this morning, and we were like, because happy birthday, Julio. He turns the big 4-0 tomorrow. Sorry, I let the secret out. No, tomorrow. It's tomorrow. So that's where you're talking about it. And I was like, wow, I'm finally getting to the age where I'm like, I talk about the 90s, like you read an article or you hear a video in 1997, and I'm like, that's not that long ago. And then it dawns on me that that's 20 years ago. Like, so yeah, it happens. I don't think I said that. We'll have to rewatch the video.
There were cell phones back then. Not smartphones, but yeah, there were.
Yeah, but they were like the ones that you did in both hands.
Like the brick. Hello.
Yeah,
which is that kind of makes me wonder about having being witness to a lot of travel scenarios myself. I mean, I'm 50 now, so I've been fortunate enough to witness these changes. I still remember the times when we were going to travel, and we still had to go to walk to the travel agent's office, sit down actually at a desk and talk about the plans, and then make reservations. Then we get the printouts of which were boarding passes. So it was an interesting ride from having been able to watch that and then all the way to today, which is I just want to book a flight and then let's just go grab a phone. In that regard, and I guess that will be my final question to you, Bob, would be. What do you perceive that the generations like the one like mine, for example, were, I don't know, 45, 50, 55, 60, and is there any kind of resistance in trying to adopt all these scenarios for travel, for booking travel? And so what are the challenges people who are 50 or older in this technology? What is your recommendation to the audience, of course?
Carlos, I'm sorry, that was cutting out for me. Were you able to hear him just fine, Bob?
No, it was cutting out for me too.
Okay.
But
guys. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Hello?
We could, yeah, Carlos, we can hear you.
No, okay. Well, I was saying that I was just giving you a little narrative about my experience having witnessed the change from sitting down with a travel agent, booking regular flights with
We caught up.
printed boarding.
We had that experience, but I think what was cutting out was the question.
The question is, for all those folks who are, for example, 50 and older, were participants of that non-digital way of traveling, and then now they're being presented with options, and these people might be experiencing the resistance. What would you tell them in order to open up and embrace everything that's going on to make their lives easier?
You can do what my dad does. He just calls me or my sister and has us do it. This is my credit card number.
I've done
I
that
understand.
with my own kid, but
yeah, Carlos, I understand what you're saying. I in the early days we did some work on kiosks, and I actually watched in Norway, in Oslo, the SAS people would pull people out of the line and make them use the kiosk. They wouldn't. So yes, it's a real problem. But we're all being surrounded by this digital mesh, I think is the new buzzword there. And so my wife spends a good amount of time on Facebook and Farmville. And she, if I told her 40 years ago that she would be doing that on a computer, she'd look at me and say, "You're absolutely crazy." So I think there's different levels of adoption. I think there's as long as it starts to take friction out of the experience, then people will be driven towards it. If it complicates the experience and it adds more friction, then no, it's just not going to go anyplace.
Going full circle back to that whole user experience, whether it's the actual travel experience or the getting there, making it easy and counterintuitive, I think, as possible.
Yeah. Okay. Another interruption on my end. We're about to wrap up today's session, but to ask you finally is, we're going to be seeing you probably, I think, in Focusrite next week. So for all those who are attending, for all those who are watching, for all those who are kind of wondering what's going to happen at Focusrite, what's going to happen in there? What can they expect?
You're going to see, in terms of innovation, you're going to see 3 different events: the battleground, the early startups, and they're going to compete on stage for a chance to be in the next round. So you got the dreamers there. Then you got the next stage startups that have got their feet on the ground or looking for funding. That's going to be at Summit. And then finally, there's going to be launch, where the more established companies launch new ideas and concepts. Every one of those 3 events are at a different level of maturity in their innovation, but they're all exciting, and they're all some neat stuff there.
You have one that one of the 3 that you're looking forward to most, Bob?
No.
No favorites. He
Okay.
loves all of his children the same.
Yeah.
Although the children know that's not always the case.
Okay. Well, thank you, Bob. That was good. Okay, Matt, one final question.
I'm looking forward to being at Focusrite and meeting you there.
Good. Okay, we'll see you there.
It's great for me to see your enthusiasm, Bob, and it's been a pleasure to meet you today.
Same here.
Absolutely.
I unfortunately won't see you at Focusrite, but Matt will. Carlos, you too?
Okay. I'm not. I don't think I'll be going, but Matt will be and Roberto will be too.
Yep.
So, but either way, we'll be around, just keeping an eye on what's going on through these. We might have a couple of broadcasts happening at like right there on the spot. So that. And the only thing for me left to do, Bob, is just thank you. Thank you so much for having agreed to be here with us today. It was a pleasure. And again, we're going to be in touch, and we'll see you at Focusrite, okay?
Great.
And that's it on my end. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you.
And we'll talk soon.
Goodbye.
Bye now.
Thanks all.
Thanks
Goodbye.
for inviting me.